Hello, Rosie. This is Vincent, and in the next uh, few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about give you an introduction about the Angular platform that we are developing. So, first of all, I need to show you where to get the source code. This is go to Bitbucket and then slash big ledger. I believe you have already been added to the uh, repository, the Bitbucket account for Big Ledger, and you should be able to see blg-account-app-ng. So click on this, you'll be able to see the source code. Now, to check out the source code or to clone the source code into your repository, you can just click clone here and run this command in your desktop. You can use a source tree or any other Git client if you like. The next step that you want to do is actually to install the Visual Studio. You can download the Visual Studio from the official website. Sorry, it's not Visual Studio, it should be Visual Code. Go to the code.visualstudio.com and you can download it for Mac, for Windows, or whatever platform that you're on. After you download the Visual Studio and install it, you should be able to open it and uh, open the directory containing the uh, Angular platform files. The next step that I would like you to consider downloading is actually a few plugins that I find very useful. Number one is the Angular 6 TypeScript, HTML, uh, Angular 7 snippets, Angular language service, Angular doc for Visual Studio Code, Cloud Foundry. This one is not really needed for now. I think the debugger for Chrome is useful also. And there is one more very useful features is Project To Do. Project Plus, To Do Plus. The Project Plus and To Do Plus will allow you to uh, view all the to do scattered all over the place. Like let's say, for example, if you click on here, if you have commented the to do, and it will appear here. And when we put the to do, we try to do it this way: to do colon followed by name, and then write whatever you want to write. This is because when we read the to do, it is easier to read, so that we know who is going to do what, instead of just putting a name, putting a to do, but not really knowing who is commenting it. After you have installed the uh, to do extension, oh, there's another to do. I don't know which to do is this. I think it is this to do plus. Forget about the project, forget about this project plus to do plus. I think you can just use this to do plus, which should be able to give you a reasonable uh, good to do features and functions. Let me show you how I'm using it. If you go to the root directory, you should be able to see a to do file. This is a file that I have created manually. And when you click into this file, you will also be you can also see that I have listed down some of the things that we want to do. Okay. The next step is that I just want to walk through various directory structures in this repository. The first one is the bin. In this bin folder, binary folder, is actually, you can see that there's an account underscore publish. Inside this account underscore publish, the set minus e and set dash x is to display the command as it is running this script. And then you can see here that when you run this command, it will actually export a node options and set the maximum O space size to 4096. And this option should set the memory of the Node.js so that when you compile in the Angular, you have enough RAM to go about. If you don't set this option, you will find that there will be an error when you do the compilation, because I think our code base is getting quite big compared with previously. This bin library or build is in library or build. As you can see here, basically we are just building various library. Now this one is actually not being used at the moment because there are some errors. I don't know what's the error. I can show you that when I try to compile the open lib, I'm getting some error here. I don't know how to fix this error. I've tried, but it is not the most critical stuff that we need to solve right now. So I'm putting it at the parking lot for the time being. So what happened is that when we want to compile the Angular, you can see that you can also type this command manually into the console terminal here. You can also do the compilation of the Angular. pwa ng build pro something is very wrong. Oh, I know. This is the old one which is not working. I should be clicking on this instead. So I think this file is the old one. Then I should be saying that it is not to be used. You should be using this. Account.com build. This is to build locally. If you do not want to type it every time manually, you can also create another terminal, and then you can actually just type bin account.com underscore build, and it will run everything here, right? So in my case now, I'm just running this manually, but sometimes I may run into problem when there's not enough RAM, because I need the node options to be set in order to have sufficient RAM for the compilation. The next step that I want to explain to you what's the difference between this account.com, applets, account.com, all build, and this kernel build and things like that. Now, if you look at these applets, um, they are actually in a different folder. Let's say, for example, inside the projects, you see that there's a account.com, there is a pwa account.com, and then there is a applets folder. Now, each of these folders are actually is like a project within this repository. And these kind of structures that we uh, we use is actually called the monorepo. Okay, so this is a monorepo structures, and if I go back to the uh, visual code, um, let me continue to walk through each of the folder. This is the distribution folder. When we compile the application, all the compile codes will be saved in this folder. And after it is being saved in this folder, if you look at one of the bin file, the one with the published, after we do the compilation, we actually run a AWS command, and this is a S3 command for AWS, and it actually move the backup in the S3 remotely before we actually copy the latest version of the PWA platform into the S3 and deploy it. As you can see here, we are also making use of a profile called account, and this profile for the accounts are something that you store in home directory.aws, and then you see that there's a credential. So I am not going to open this credential because it has got private and confidential keys. If you have created a credential file inside this folder, then you can specify the profile in the credential file, and then you can uh, specify the profile inside this credential file to use when you are deploying the files. This ACL public is important for us to put it there so that after you deploy the file into the S3, um, any users can actually download the file and into their web browser. This recursive is to make sure that the permissions for the public is set for all the files in this folder. There's one more thing that I would like to highlight is that when you have a prod here and the AOT here, it is actually compiling ahead of time. That means that when you do the compilation, you would actually be, oh, you see here, I run into some problem when I do the compilation. When I do the compilation here, when I do compilation directly, I run into some error, JS stack trace. Okay, now if I were to, instead of typing the command to ng build pwa platform dash prod and dash dash aot, now I'm going to compile this using the bin account.com and then build. Okay, so when I'm building it, as you can see, it set the node options to allocate more RAM for the compilers to compile the application. Okay, we shall continue. Um, when you look at the these files, you see that there's an account.com now. Remember, this account.com is actually the live and the production website. If you just want to do some testing, you have made some changes, you can always deploy this to the account.net. If you, I mean, the only difference is that it's deploying to the account.net instead of deploying to the account.com. So if you look at the account.com, this is the production. We will only launch the production when we are sure that everything is working. Okay, if we go to account.net, okay, is basically the same thing, but the only difference is that we sort of use this as testing. You can log in, sign in, and then sign in, and then you can do whatever testing you want. Uh, Once you have proven and shown that everything is working, then only you deploy it to the account.com. This is very important because we want to minimize bugs. We want to test it properly before we uh, launch it to our customers and all the users to use. For all the applets, big ledger, and all this, you can ignore it for the time being. Now, every of our customers, not every, some of our customers, they want to build an e-commerce website, they want to build a certain custom website. Um, so we put a shell script here for them to actually also to build, to deploy to their respective. This is just to build, this is to serve if you just want to test it locally, and this is publish, which will publish to the celllab-ecom.account.net. And if we have other customers, we'll do the same. So this is the bin directory for you to do the compilation and the deployment. Next, this is the node modules. Inside these node modules, you can see there are many folders, many files. So this is a standard folder for all the Angular applications, so I will not explain too much. If you look at the reports folder, this is the lines of codes that are being generated on the 2018-09-21. I've written a small shell script. This is the count codes, okay? So this count code will count the number of lines and export it to the reports. Let's try bin count codes. Right. So if you look at the count codes file in the report, we have a new file. This is the old file. I click on this window and then I go back to the reports and I click on the other file. Over the span of 3 months, our code base have increased from 1,442 files to 1,681 files with 346 HTML and JSON file 72. Here is 75. Okay, so this is the total is 205659. Oh, I have no idea what does the blank mean. Anyway, let's continue to explore. Now, if sometimes when you do some coding and there are some files that you want to retrieve later or something like that, you can actually put them into this folder because yes, I mean, when we use the Git, we can actually retrieve the history, but sometimes it is quite troublesome to actually retrieve the history. Another practice that I do is usually I will check out the same repository into a different folder. Let me show you where's the folder. Let me go back to the home repository. Okay, I have a repo repository which is storing all my production, the main repositories, but I think I have also a sandbox repository. In this sandbox repository, I also check out another copy of this. Now, for now, you may think that it is not too useful to have two folders, but later on when you develop the applications, sometimes you want to check out let me open the terminal. Where's the terminal? Mm, where is the terminal? Okay, terminal. Sometimes when you want to uh, make some changes to the repository, to the files, do your programming, you might want to check uh, check out into a different branch, and then you make your changes, and so that you can commit to the Bitbucket anytime you want. If you look at the uh, Git branch, so currently I'm in the master branch, uh, but uh, usually when I want to, before I start doing any coding, I will actually check out into my own specific branch, and I do what I want, and after I've completed what I wanted to do, and I will merge this branch back into the master branch. So um, normally when you look at the standard Angular application, most of the files are actually located here. So if you look at the files here, there's still some logo. Actually, we are supposed to delete and remove all this logo. We would prefer that all these logos to be done as the uh, SVG, scalable vector graphic file, so that it can be embedded into the component directly. So do not put any files here, because all the files here will be deleted someday, sometime in the future. So um, the next very important uh, folder where most of the codes are residing would be these project folders. If you go into the project folders, there is an account folder, and this folder contains 4 subfolders. These subfolders are called the account kernel lib. This one is currently not used. Even if you click inside, it is pretty empty. Uh, this one is actually the main shared folder, because inside our single repository we have many different projects, but sometimes we share a lot of codes. So this is the shared folder where we have many more subfolders, modules, shared classes, and all that. I will give you a walkthrough um, later. Now, if you look at the applets folder, now this is the place where we put all the applets. There will be thousands, hundreds of thousands of applets to be created in the future. Now, the first folder is actually the blockchain, account blockchain. This is currently not being used. I have just created the folder for future use. This account.example currently is also, there's not much inside. Basically, what I'm trying to show is that this is the account example, which is the vendor name, and this vendor name is followed by a project name, and then inside the project name you can have example applet 1, applet 2, applet 3. So it is quite important for you to understand that each of the applet um, will only share the codes in one or more of these folders. The applet should be as independent as possible, and any of the applet should not be storing codes, sharing codes, or using codes from another applet. This is so important, so that in the future we can just click on this applet, and then we can copy it to another folder or move it to another vendor. If we do not follow these guidelines, the code will be very messy. It will be very hard to maintain. If you look at the applet, uh, there's also an account platform. So the platform will have many applets by itself. There will be applets for managing the catalog, applets for user to change password, log in, log out, applet for managing the store, uh, because this is an applet store applet, so it's a store for managing the applet. There is a catalog maintenance. We have an applet catalog actually, and then there's managing the group, redirect the applet services. Actually, these services should not be here because strictly speaking, we should only have applets here. So this is to be deleted, and I think I will add a new file here. To do, okay, and this to do is that I don't know why I cannot edit now. Uh, Something is wrong, maybe because I have not checked out the source code for some time. But oh, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, so to do colon and then Vincent to remove the services folder in this directory. Okay, so this is to do to remove the services folder. And then, well, something that you observe here, this one turned into green. Green means I've created a new file in this folder. Okay, the next folder that I want to introduce to you is actually the uh, so if you look here, there's an account platform. This is the vendor, followed by this is the project, and follow the project. There is various applet inside. Um, this core is related to the platform, and this ERP is related to ERP, and of course, there's a sandbox for testing purpose. Um, if you were to look at the other folder, we have a big ledger. You may be curious to find out why should there be a big ledger. In fact, we will have a big ledger, and then we have another folder called the uh, wavelet, and then we will have a folder for cell lab. All the applets that we develop for cell lab. In cell lab, we can have more than one projects. We can have the e-commerce project. We can have the other projects. If you look at uh, inside the e-commerce project, we have many different applets developed for this project that are all sorted nicely. And then uh, the next one is a Digi Malaysia. If I look at the Digi Malaysia, there is a Digi Portal, and there's one, two, three, four, about 4 to 5 applets. Okay, so um, next one is actually the native post. For this native post, I think currently you can ignore it for now. We are not going to look at it for now. And then there's an applet that we try to develop for Samsung projects. And then there's also a Sengheng that we actually have created a vendor folder, and then followed by different projects, and each of the projects having different applet. Now, when you look at this, something is very wrong. Number one, this folder should contain only the applet. The developer involved, although we have talked to them, but they are still using shared services. So these are the things that we need to remove. We need to remove from the applet because applet should not be sharing any files here. This shared should be removed. Um, the data here should also be removed. When you look at these data structures, actually they should be using the shared files under the account open lib. Under the account open libs, we have a models here. Under the models, we have a data type library. No, not data type. We are looking at the aggregates for the retail, for the kernel. No. Okay, so not the aggregates. We are looking at DB schema. Here we should have all the database schema for all the tables already created. So um, uh, there's certainly something very wrong here, and we may have to do a lot of refactoring later. And if you look at this user activity log, actually, it I'm not sure actually if this is an applet, but rightfully there should be an applet here, but currently it is not. Um, if we are looking at the redirect, what is this redirect applet module? Maybe it's just redirecting a file. Okay, I think there are easier, better way to do this, but anyway, it's all right. So all the applets in the Angular platform are like apps. In the future, we may be doing some wrapper applets here, and we would like to really make use of Angular elements so that the third-party developer is able to develop their Angular elements. Okay, you can take a look at these Angular elements, whereby you within the container of the Angular elements, we can actually load another third-party application into the applet and still be able to communicate between this third-party application with the Angular platform. Um, so, but for now, we are not using this, but we are going to use it soon, maybe end of the year or next year. You can do some reading if you like, and next, I want to show you more about these PWAs. Okay, so if you look at the Cell Lab e-commerce project, we can build a website like this, and it looks like this. This is a compiled and deployed using this PWA Cell Lab ecom without the E2E, then you can also look at the PWA account platform. And if you look at this PWA account platform, of course, the standard folder directory structures would be to look inside the source. And when you look inside the source, of course, there are a few folders. First of all, there's environment. I think this one is a standard folder. There's the asset. And if you look at the assets, they are storing the DG logo here, which I don't really like and don't really encourage. Actually, I think we should not be storing the logo here. It is possible to embed SVG in Angular component. Okay. There are many inline SVG that we can put in a component without actually putting the logo into the source code here, because come on, think about it. If we have like thousands of developers developing the applet, we cannot be asking each of the developer to actually submit their logo to us, and then we help them check into the uh, repository one by one, and then give them the URL and so on and so forth. So if you look at the Angular account platform, the other folder that you need to pay attention is actually the app. Now, the moment you go into the app, you will see that we always start from the main module. So if you look at the app module, which is the main module, okay, so inside this main module, uh, you can see that this goes to the kernel module, and the kernel module is inside the kernel, and the kernel module which is located here, okay, and inside the kernel module you can see that it is loading this account platform, UI-lib, and OpenLib. For now, the only one that really matters or take effect is the account OpenLib. These three modules are actually empty for now, so you can ignore them for now. So you can see that from the app module, we are going to the kernel module, which actually loads the account OpenLib module. Now, the moment we loads the kernel module, it will give us all the NgRx and all the library, the components to be used by uh, this PWA platform. That means if you are developing a Cell Lab project, let's take a look at the Cell Lab project and look at the app, look at the app module. You can see that in this Cell Lab main module, it actually also it imports the account OpenLib module directly via a relative path. So this is like well, when you import it this way, you are able to also use the features and functions. You don't necessarily need to go through the kernel, this kernel folder, and from the app module go to the kernel, and from the kernel then you go to uh, the, the account OpenLib. And then there is a library module. I think this library module is basically we consider the big ledger, the cell lab, the native post, all these are like a library. We need to consider them as library because we will be uh, creating Angular routes in these applets itself. And when we declare the Angular routes in these applets, we actually need to include the library so that when we are trying to load this library, it will be loaded properly. Otherwise, when we go to this platform, let's just say we go to a specific URL, uh, let's say Sengheng or something something. This URL, even if it is a valid URL, will not be recognized. So it is quite important you see how they are all linked together. Um, Next, let's open the shared folder. In this folder, there are some common pages, customer agreement. Okay, so customer agreement, I don't know what's inside here. There's a big ledger cloud component. This component will give you all the purchasing license agreement, something that you can see terms of use here. It gives you all this license pricing and things like that. Okay, so we are not going to touch this for now. We are going to look at not the common pages. These are the UI widget that we shared across. Actually, this UI widget, grid layout and things like that, is in case we want to embed some reusable components used throughout this application, then we can make use of the UI widget. Otherwise, it's fine. You can just ignore it. And the next part is actually the viewport. Instead of going into the viewport, uh, I would like to open the app component.html. If you know, this is the entry point, the app component. So with the app component, it will load the viewport as a component. And if you go into the viewport, there's a content area, there's a landing page, there's a layout widgets. And these landing page layout widgets are the ones that making up this user interface, the top bar here, the footer here, and then if you click here, and if you log in, sign in, okay. So once you sign in, the middle part, which is the white color or light gray color, this is the content area. So if you look at the viewport, and inside the viewport, let's look at the viewport component HTML. So if you look at the viewport component HTML, we have a header and we have a footer, and everything in between is actually the Angular router. Now, this Angular router outlet allow us to actually, when click on each of the applet, this URL change, and this route will actually load the applet and display it in the middle section. So if we go back to the main, so this content area is actually replaceable. So by default, we will go to the content area. The moment you log in, you click the home, this part is actually the content area. And if you go into the content area component, you see that there's a landing page with a ngIf. That means that if it is logged in, then if it is not logged in, go to the landing page. If it is logged in, go to the Launchpad Omar. Now, if it is logged in and Launchpad option is equals to version 2, then we will use the Launchpad container. This one, they have hard-coded. I'm not sure how it works because it is using content projection. I think something will have to be done later, but anyway, they have made some changes. So anyway, currently, after you have logged in, it is actually going to the Launchpad Omar. So if I go to the layout widget, then we actually have a Launchpad Omar. So if we look at the Launchpad Omar component HTML, it there's actually group by projects. Well, basically, Omar has parameterized all these applet properties like the account platform, the cell lab, the logo, and all that. He has parameterized it, and he considered it as a project of the sitemap, and just look through it and showing the project, the name, etc. So this is the login. But if you, this is the launchpad, but if you were to look at go back to the content area, and if you were to look at the content area component, we have another launchpad container. Now The Launchpad container is uh, containing the app Launchpad carousel. Why do we say the carousel is because when you touch on your Android phone, when you hold on to it, then you can actually like swipe it to the left or to the right. Okay, so I will consider this as a carousel so that you can move it to the left and to the right. Um, and in each of the Launchpad carousel, if we go inside, you will see that there is a launcher app widget. Whew, launcher app widget. So let's take a look. This launcher app widget is because in each of the box here, we consider it as a launcher app widget because it may be storing the icon of the app, but just like how you use a mobile phone, it can also be a folder. And if it is a folder, inside you will see many mini icons of the applet. So let's take a look at this. Um, Inside the Launchpad widget, it is possible that it display an app or it display a folder. And if it is displaying a folder, if this Launchpad widget is of type folder, widget type is a folder, as you can see here, then it should be uh, showing you the Launchpad folder component. And if it is in the Launchpad folder component, then you get to display multiple app. Now, this part is not working yet, partially working, but I still haven't got time to actually fix it. If you look at the iPhone folder Launchpad, okay, so you look at the if you look at the iPhone, you can, well, I guess it's the same for Android. You can actually have, well, I think you know what I mean. Basically, uh, in your iPhone and iPad, it is possible for you to actually have to put icon inside a folder by superimposing when you drag and drop. So, uh, after you see that there's a displaying launcher app, and if you go into the launcher app, then you see the app tenant, the app badge, and also the app name, of course, not forgetting the app launcher icon. So this app launcher icon should, and this whole app thing should actually be loaded dynamically, because when you have thousands of applets um, being compiled and being uh, launched into an Angular platform, you don't want to be loading all the files at once because it will take too long. The user experience will be very bad. Um, for now, we are not using the Launchpad page control because in any um, iPhone or iPad, you can see this two dot, or sometimes it's a three dots at the bottom of the page. This is a dot, but of course it can also be uh, minified uh, version of the each of the Launchpad panel, so that user can just swipe to scroll left or scroll right and click on the page, and it should load into the content area. The content area I'm referring to, the content area here. Okay. So um, the next part that I want to show you is actually when, as you can see from the app component, it will load the viewport, and after that the content area and so on. The viewport module, okay, if you look into the viewport module, uh, you will see that, sorry, it should be viewport component. When you go into the viewport component, you can see that in this component, we are actually importing the UI controller state, the viewport interface, the viewport load init, and select video, and some of this from the UI controller uh, NgRx. Um, I will talk a little bit more about NgRx, but for now it's just a basic introduction whereby you actually declare the state, and every time the application is being loaded, you need to initialize the NgRx, and then basically you send a command and dispatch it and saying that, hey, the viewport is loading. And when you tell the NgRx the viewport is loading, initialize loading, it is up to us to specify what are the effects. If you look at NgRx, you will understand that there are some effects that we will be creating. So if you look at NgRx, NgRx inside the kernel, inside the identity controller, I have this is a standard NgRx. Now, there is something very important I just want to share with you a little bit more. If you look at most of the tutorial, it does not split the actions clearly for you. Actions and effects, sometimes they split it nicely for you, but they don't really split the selectors for you. They don't really split the states for you, and so on. So uh, it wasn't easy, but it was achievable that we actually are able to split all these files into different folders so that when the programmers are coding the states, they know they are coding the states. If you look at the ultimate Angular examples, they are actually mixing the states with the selectors with the reducers. These three are combined into one. So let's go back to the Angular. Let's go back to the viewport component. So in this viewport component, it dispatch an action to the viewport NgRx and viewport store to send a signal saying that the viewport is to be loaded, initialize viewport load init, and then we dispatch account login identity load init. When we dispatch this, it will go to the local storage and the IndexedDB to check the existence of the whether the users have logged into to this web browser previously. One of the other things that I want you to look at is if you look at under the account openlib, beside the kernel, you look at the models. Inside the models, we have a data type libraries, and then we have the aggregates, and inside the aggregates, there's kernel again, oh, it can be confusing. So this is actually the kernel aggregates, and then you look at the Postgres, we actually have all the data type, you know, properly defined here. And then we have the util. Now, this is the important part. Eh? No, sorry, this is not the util. This is not the part that I want to show you. I want to show you is utils. Under the utils, there's offline storage and there's a DEXI database. This is a local index database. If you look at your account platform, you can right click and then inspect. And when you inspect, you can click on the application. So the moment you click on the application, you can refresh here if you like. But basically, there's a local storage here. There is a session storage. There is a index DB, and inside the index DB, we actually store the users, the vendors, the whatever. So anyway, we have a plan. We have planned to support offline login. That means that we actually store the hash of the password. Uh, so when we store the hash of the password without internet connection, the user can still log in locally. Um, so I guess I have given you a high level walkthrough of all the folders here. But to go into detail, as you can see, is rather complicated. There are quite a lot of files, different folders, different directory structures, different dependency. Um, After you've uh, watched this video, I would like you to watch it like another 2 to 3 times just to get familiar with the different folders, and I will record another new video for you to talk more about NgRx, how it's being used. Uh, Maybe I will go through with you the login and the logout process. Thank you very much.